Welcome to Deck Analysis and Testing. Today we have a look at Fluffal. Fluffal is not a new archetype. It is a fairy feed hybrid fusion deck that has been in the game for quite some time, and historically has been an okay deck that's only pretty much good at doing OTKs. They do struggle with going first, and although they do technically already have an exclusive skill, it's pretty bad, and you know it's bad when people would rather use a Shizu's skill, which all it does is look at the top of both players' decks for 5 turns. Well, until now, not only do we get a new skill that's actually good, as well as more board-breaking tools, most importantly got stuff to do going first. Scythe is an in-archetype hand trap that is super easy to search, and it lets you fusion summon in your opponent's turn, which gives you both a non-targeting pop and a massive monster on the field. Other consistency tools and extenders like Penguin and Dolphin really help out the deck as well. Let's start off by looking at the new skill. Edge Imp Retrofit is a skill that can only be used once per turn, so it's not once per duel, and that is pretty good. And it has 2 effects. One is to shuffle back a Edge Imp from your hand or field and add any Edge Imp from your deck to your hand, and that not only includes the Razor that you need for a lot of your fusions. You can also get your Scythe for going turn 1, or you can get your Chain to search the really broken search spell. Next is the second effect, is when you have the fusion monster, the bear, you can just steal your opponent's monster and just equip it to your own monster. And that does not start a chain, it cannot be responded, and it's really good at getting rid of your opponent's boss monsters, and it bypasses like any protection, and that's really good. And you will be able to see in some of the replays later on that this does come up really handy against some decks. Okay, let's have a look at the monsters. First are the Edge Imps. We have 1 copy of Edge Imp Chain, and when it is sent to the graveyard from your hand or field, can search a Fright for a card from your deck to your hand. It's usually going to search your search spell, Fight for a Patchwork, which is a search spell that can search both a Edge Imp and a Poly. It must search both at once, so we cannot play too few copies of Poly, otherwise if we draw all the Polys in our hand, we cannot activate this card. Or, alternatively, we can search Discard, which is a fusion spell that allows you to fusion summon using stuff from your graveyard as well, which is really useful for you to just get a fusion monster basically for free. Next is 1 copy of Edge Imp Sabers. I think I said Razor in the intro, I don't know what I'm talking about. So Sabers is only played because a lot of the fusion monsters need this card as material specifically, and also it has a pretty good effect, because when it is in your graveyard, you can just revive it for free by putting back a card from your hand back to the top of your deck, which allows you to just fusion summon using itself as material once more. And for our last Edge Imp, we have the Scythe, which is the new one. This card is our main monster to search going first, because it allows us to fusion summon using this card and stuff from your hand during your opponent's main phase. And also it has a protection effect. Whenever your Frightfur is destroyed, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead, and that includes the effect of your fusion to pop itself, so you can protect that from self-destructing. And the reason why we're playing so few Edge Imps is because our toy vendor, which we will talk about later, needs to have a needs to draw a Fluffal to actually use its effect to special summon from hand, so we are minimizing the amount of non-Fluffal monsters, or just cards in general, so that we have a higher chance of actually drawing a Fluffal and not have to send the card that we draw to the graveyard. And for the Fluffals, we have 2 dogs. You should play free if you have free, it's just because this is a free-to-play version, so I don't want to play free. This is your main normal summon. When you do that, you can search a Fluffal monster, or specifically Sabers, to your hand. And this also works from a special summon, so if you use the effect of Toy Vendor, you can special summon this card and use its effect as well. Next is 3 copies of Bear. You can pitch this card to search a Toy Vendor. 1 copy of Owl. You can search a Poly on summon, and also you can pay 500 life points to do a fusion summon, but both effects are exclusively hard once per turn, so you can't use both of them in the same turn. Usually you're gonna search a poly. Next is one copy of Penguin. This is a really good target for a fusion material, because once you do that, you get to draw 2 and discard 1 for free. It also has another effect on field which we basically won't use. It's only good if you're playing Xyz monsters, but we are not. So it's mainly used for the free draws. Next are 3 copies of Wings. Some people don't play free copies. I like to play free copies because my build focuses on Toy Vendor a lot more. So Wings is really good to draw in that situation as well. Wings has a graveyard effect to banish itself plus another Fluffal to draw a card, and then send a Toy Vendor from your field to the graveyard, and then draw another card. So it's basically a draw 2, which not only does it, get you 2 cards in hand, it also gets you a third one, because when you send Toy Vendor, you use its graveyard effect to search another Fluffal to your hand. And we have a copy of Fluffal Cat. When it is used as fusion material, you can add back a poly, and Fluffal Dolphin. This is one of the new ones. It is really good as extension because you can target a Toy Vendor from your graveyard and reset it, and then send a Fluffal or Edgem Sabers from your deck to your graveyard. And usually you will be sending the Wing to use its graveyard effect on the vendor that you just set back. And occasionally, if you don't have access to Edgem Sabers, you might also want to use its effect to send Sabers as well. For the spells, we're playing 2 Toy Vendors. I would like to play free if I have free, but unfortunately you can only get 2 as of the recording of this video, because you can only get it from level up rewards. And wait, let's have a look at the effect. Once per turn you can discard 1 card, draw a card, show it. If it's a Fluffal, you can special summon a monster from your hand, and not only the one that you draw, you can special summon any monster from your hand, so that is pretty good. But otherwise, if you don't draw a Fluffal, you need to discard the thing that you drew. So that's why we're playing a lot of Fluffals and as few copies of the other stuff as possible. And also when it's sent to the graveyard, you get to search a Fluffal or an Edgem Sabers, and that includes from the field, from the hand, from anywhere. So you can oftentimes use Toy Vendor to discard Toy Vendor, and then use the graveyard effect of the second Toy Vendor. That does come up a lot. We talked about Patchwork, we talked about Fight for Fusion, Poly needs their introduction. Fight for Repair is an interesting one. You don't usually use its on-field, activation effect from your hand, because this is just in our deck mainly for our fusion monster to send from our deck to the graveyard, because it has a graveyard effect to banish itself from the graveyard to special summon a Fluffal or Edgem from your hand. So it's just basically a free summon. For our extra deck, we are playing a whole bunch of fusion monsters. We're playing 1 copy of Sabertooth. This is a big fusion that can revive another Frightfur from the graveyard, which is great for doing enough for lethal damage. We have 1 copy of Bear, which is not very good on its own, but because of how our skill interacts with this monster in particular, we can use it as basically a really strong form of removal that cannot be responded. Next is 1 copy of Tiger. This is another one of those really strong board breakers that was already in the game before the new support. When you use a Sabers plus a whole bunch of Fluffals from your hand or field as its material, you just get to basically blow up your opponent's entire board. And you can oftentimes chain block this card because of your effects when you use your monsters as fusion material. For example, Cat has a effect, Penguin has an effect when it's sent, or Edgem Chain has an effect, but you can't use it as a material for Tiger. But you get the idea. So a lot of the fusion monsters can actually be protected by chain blocking, and that plays around monster negates. For example, Balodrock is something that you can play around. Next is 1 copy of Cruel Whale. This is your main target to fusion summon during your opponent's turn, and it allows you to pop 2 cards on the field, 1 from your side and 1 from your opponent's side, both non-targeting. And even though you usually need to pop itself if you make it during your opponent's turn without anything else on the field, you can protect it by banishing the Scythe from the graveyard. And also, during either player's turn, you can send a Frightful card from your deck or extra deck to your graveyard and target a fusion monster you control, and it gains half of its attack. And usually it targets itself, it becomes a 3900 attack, which is really huge, and also gets to send the spell to the graveyard that we just talked about to get its graveyard effect for next turn, if you're using it during your opponent's turn. Next is 2 copies of Kraken. This card is really generic. Similarly to Cruel Whale, it just needs a Edge Imp and a Fluffal, doesn't need Saber specifically, and has a once per turn effect to just send a monster your opponent controls to the graveyard. It is a soft once per turn, so if you make 2 copies, you can send 2 monsters, so that's why we're playing 2 copies. And also, even though it cannot attack directly the turn it's activated, it can attack twice. And if you use the first one to send, you can just always make the second one, and the second one will be able to attack twice for Rayleigh. And also during the end of battle phase, after this card battled, you switch this card to defense, which is nice because it has quite a bit of defense. And for our final fusion monster, we are playing 1 copy of Frightful Wolf. You don't really need this card because Kraken is usually better, but Wolf can potentially attack a lot more times, and because if you use Frightful Fusion, you can use all of your monsters from your graveyard as material, so you can oftentimes make a wolf that can attack like 5 times in a single turn, which is insane. And also it increases its own attack. Not itself, but if you have Tag on the field, it actually boosts the attack of your wolf, so it can attack over a lot of your opponent's stuff, and also deal enough for lethal damage as well. Finally, 1 copy of Linkuriboh, just as our only Link monster to link away any level 1 monsters, which will be our Fluffal Wing. We just link it off if we just normal summon it or special summon it using our skill, our Toy Vendor. We can just send it to the graveyard and then use its graveyard effect that way. Okay, let's have a look at the expensive version, which is actually not that much different from the free-to-play version, at least for my own deck building preferences, because my build of Fluffal is a lot more focused on Toy Vendor, and all of the Toy Vendor stuff is pretty much free-to-play, like Toy Vendor itself, the bear, which searches it, and Wing is a low-rarity monster. So we don't actually need to do that many changes to the deck to make it into a better version. The only changes are that we're playing 3 copies of Fluffal Dog, and we're playing 2 copies of Cruel Whale, because you can make one during your opponent's turn and make the other one during your own turn. If you have more copies of Patchwork, you can theoretically play more. I just like playing 1 because it's really searchable. And if you play more, you also need to play more polys, because you might run out of polys to search from your deck. You can play 2 and 2, but 1 and 2 works fine for me because of just how searchable both Patchwork and Chain is already, thanks to your skill. So yeah, let's have a look at the replays. Okay, for our first game, we are going second, which allows us to show how good this deck, how insane this deck is going second. And it always has been, but after the new support, the amount of things that you can just do during your turn if you go second is just insane. You can break it through pretty much any board. Our opponent is playing Veilodrock. They're going to make a Veilodrock on field with 2 set back row. We're going to lead with a Patchwork because we drew it. We're going to grab a Poly and a Chain. And the first thing we do is to threaten the Veilodrock immediately. We have a way around it, even though he could negate our monster effects. As I said in the intro, we could chain block by using the graveyard effects of the stuff that we use as fusion material, but unfortunately, our opponent has an IDP, which trades really well with our Cruel Whale, because our Cruel Whale needs to pop something on our field, but now we don't, so we can't pop anything. But it's still fine. We can still combo off because of how much gas this deck has. We're gonna use Bear to grab Toy Vendor to special summon the Dolphin by pitching another Toy Vendor. The Toy Vendor will search ourselves a Edgem Sabers. We're gonna use Dolphin to reset. He's gonna banish our Dolphin, which doesn't really do anything. I'm gonna draw a couple of cards using our wing and then search another one with Toy Vendor, activate our Toy Vendor. We could use the effect, but realistically we don't really have a good target to send just yet, so we're not gonna do that. And then we're gonna just use Poly and make Bear. And our opponent does not do anything, which means we can just use our skill, just yeet that monster. He should have used Book of Moon while I successfully fusion summoned my bear, but guess it's too late now. He's gonna book our monster now, which doesn't really do anything. And then we can just use our Frightful Fusion, make another fusion, attempt to pop the field, but he will just scoop before we could do that. Okay, in our second game we are going first. This game showcases both what we aim to do going first and what the weaknesses of this deck is, because, spoiler alert, we won't be winning this game. We're playing against Shadows, which is a really bad matchup against Fluffals, because most of our destruction effects are, destruction effects. The only way we can get rid of things without popping is with Kraken. But all of the other stuff are pop effects, and also we special summon quite a lot, which is not good if we're playing against Winder. But anyway, our main turn 1 goal is not to make any boss monsters, but rather to gain a lot of card advantage, including a Scythe in our hand so that we can fusion summon a monster during our opponent's turn, while also gaining a bunch of material that we could potentially use when our turn comes around again. Our opponent is playing Shadows, they're going to be able to pop off, and because we don't have a extra deck monster, he can't really use Shadow Fusion. But unfortunately, because Scythe is only active during the main phase, we are forced to use it during the main phase, which means they can just continue their main phase after we use the effect and activate Shadow Fusion, which they will be doing in this game. He's gonna try to, I think, go to battle with 3-set back row. We're gonna make Cruel Whale attempting to pop one of the back row, hopefully popping a Schism so it prevents him from potentially making a Winder. But we pop something that isn't Schism, which really sucks. I guess if he has 3-set back row and one of them is the quick play fusion spell, doesn't really matter too much, which may we pop because we're probably losing anyway. But because we popped a back row, and have a fusion monster on field, he will be able to activate Shadow Fusion fusing from his deck. And then he just gets to trigger all of these graveyard effects. And it might be better to not fusion summon, but realistically we don't really have a convincing out to Winder. Especially because we don't actually have a Edge Imp monster in our hand or field. We drew one with Toy Vendor, but unfortunately Toy Vendor forces us to discard it, which means we need to use the effect of Sabers to summon itself, which means we get locked by Winder, so we're just gonna scoop. And the third and final game, we're going first against, I don't know what he's playing, don't remember. Shurnui, yeah, Shurnui. Okay, we did open with a Scythe, and we did open with a bear, which gives us access to Toy Vendor. And our skill will be able to grab ourselves a chain, which is a really good target for our Toy Vendor to discard. So we're gonna do that. We draw a cat who will not special summon because there's just no reason to do that. We're gonna grab ourselves a Patchwork, grabbing ourselves a Poly, and Sabers, and because we don't actually have good targets for our Scythe to fuse with, we are gonna, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make Tiger, and then Cat grab back the Poly, and Tiger pop our own Toy Vendor so that we can search a better target for our Scythe to fuse with. But before we do that, we can search a Dolphin, reset the Toy Vendor, and then use Fluffal Wings to send the Toy Vendor to the graveyard and draw 2, and then search a Penguin, which is a lot better as a fusion material with Scythe. And we also get like 4 other cards in our hand for next turn as well, which is all pretty nice. Our opponent is going to combo off with Shurnui and pop our fusion monster, which, to be honest, is kind of fine. We don't really care about that too much. He's gonna make a copy of Spectral Sword Shade. We're gonna pop it before he can use its effect. And then we're gonna use the effect to also send a copy of the spell to make it 39. I probably should have put it in attack, but anyway, our opponent has a spell that revives back his Spectral Jolt Shay while also banishing our Scythe, which is really annoying, but thankfully, we're still not dead yet. So he's gonna pass back to us with 2 set cards. We're gonna lead with a Fluffal Dog. He will be negating with Warning Point, which is honestly not that big of a deal. We're gonna Sabers, put back a Fusion to summon itself, and then activate the other Fusion to make a second Cruel Whale. Cruel Whale doesn't target, so we can pop his back row that way. We can send a Kraken to our graveyard to make our Cruel Whale really big, and then activate the Frightful Fusion to make Bear, which you saw in the first game is really good against monsters with protection or with negates. So we just make this, steal our Sun Saga, attack the Doom Kaiser, steal the Doom Kaiser, and slam in for 39.